Let us pray. At the beginning of this week, we ask you, Father, to renew and strengthen in us the awareness of our duty and privilege as members of this assembly. We ask you also in your divine providence to bless and protect the assembly and the province we are elected to serve. Amen.
Introduction of visitors.
The Deputy Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to introduce to you, through you to members of the Assembly, His Excellency, Mr. Joseph Tomo Sange, the High Commissioner of Uganda, East Africa. Mr. Speaker, we are all aware of the tragic circumstances the nation of Uganda has had to endure starting over a decade and a half ago. It was therefore a special pleasure to have met the High Commissioner earlier today, now to introduce him to the Assembly. In 1986, the current government of President Museveni was established out of a national resistance movement of which the High Commissioner was Secretary and Treasurer of the Central Fund. Since then, we have noted that the impressive efforts of the government to rebuild the nation of Uganda. In order to express our welcome to His Excellency and to add our encouragement to the efforts ongoing in his home country, I would ask His Excellency to stand, as he is now in your gallery, and to receive the recognition of this Assembly.
Presenting petitions.
The member for Edmonton Meadowlark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to present to the Legislative Assembly a petition signed by more than 1,000 people calling for the government to deny approval to the regional sanitary landfill proposed for the Pine Lake area owing to the possible danger of permanently damaging this natural resource.
Reading and receiving petitions. Presenting reports by standing and special committees. Notices of motions. Introduction of bills.
For Edmonton Avonmore.
Speaker, I beg leave to introduce Bill number 249, an act to amend certain statutes on marital status. This bill is designed to amend a number of acts, 10 in number, to remove provisions which discriminate on the basis of marital status, as well as to broaden the definition of the word spouse.
The honourable member for Edmonton Avonmore has moved first reading of Bill 249, an act to amend certain statutes on marital status act. Those in favour of first reading, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. So ordered.
Bill number 249, an act to amend certain statutes on marital status, introduced by the honourable member, Ms. Lang, is now read a first time. Tabling returns and reports.
The Minister of Occupational Health and Safety.
Mr. Speaker, it's my pleasure to table the annual report of Alberta Occupation Health and Safety Council.
Yep.
Introduction of special guests.
The member for Calgary Mountain View, followed by the member for Edmonton Whitemud.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my pleasure to be able to introduce to you and through you to all the members of the Legislative Assembly this afternoon some special guests who are sitting in the public gallery. Mr. Tony Galano and his wife, Mrs. Carmela Galano, who are visiting us from Prato, Italy, near Florence. They're accompanied this afternoon, Mr. Speaker, by Ralph Grossi, Nicolina San Gregorio, and Philomena San Gregorio, all from Calgary. I'd ask all honourable members to give them a warm Alberta welcome. Thank you.
Edmonton Whitemont.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, to you and through you, it's my pleasure to introduce two members of the Legislative Assembly, Mr. Andy Stone. Mr. Stone is the Executive Director of Freedom Tours. Freedom Tours is a concept that has opened a whole new world for physically disabled persons, allowing them to participate in activities related to the wilderness. Some of you will be hearing from Mr. Stone again, the Minister of Recreation and Parks, for example. I ask all of you to join with me in welcoming Mr. Andy Stone to the Legislative Assembly. If he would stand.
The member for Edmonton Meadowlark, followed by Edmonton Calder.
Mr. Speaker, it's my pleasure to introduce to you and through you to members of the Legislative Assembly 5 people who are here today in support of the petition that I presented earlier. They are Dorothy Shallon, Bill Scott, Pearl Scott, Cecil Brooke, and Gail MacDonald. I would ask that they rise in the gallery and receive the welcome of the members of the legislature.
Edmonton Calder.
Mr. Speaker, it is my pleasure today to introduce to you and to members of the Assembly 3 constituents from Edmonton Calder, Bob and Sarah and John Wallace, who are the parents of Catherine Wallace, one of our pages. Accompanying them today is Catherine's grandmother, Naomi Williamson from Odessa, Texas, and another grandmother, Dorothy Wallace from Calgary, Alberta, and Mary Lou Cushman from Kent, Washington. They're seated in the public gallery, and I would ask that they rise and receive the warm welcome of the Assembly.
Ministerial statements.
Ministerial statements. Okay.
Oral question period.
Gee, I thought it was surprising.
Question period again.
Mr. Speaker, to the Premier. Mr. Speaker, the Premier's good friend, Brian Mulroney, came to visit him this weekend and left Alberta calling our concerns about his 9% sales tax absolute nonsense. Mr. Speaker, obviously the Premier's back at it again, supposedly fighting for Alberta and being just as ineffective as he's been on every other issue, Mr. Speaker. But given, Mr. Speaker, his past record, it is probably hard for the Premier to be convincing on this issue because the sales tax is so closely linked with the Mulroney trade deal, Mr. Speaker, the deal that our Premier spent our tax money promoting. Mr. Speaker, remember the rhetoric. All by itself, the deal was going to make our exporters so competitive that they would take on the world. Now the story has changed. The deal alone won't be enough, Mr. Speaker. The federal government obviously feels exporting companies need another break, paid for out of the pockets of ordinary Canadians.
Right.
And my question is to the Premier, Mr. Speaker. Was the Premier not aware that the federal government planned to make us all pay this sales tax so that the exporters could deal with the effects of the Mulroney trade agreement?
Mr. Speaker, it's remarkable that the Honourable Leader and whoever researches his questions for him can so consistently come up with such a false set of facts before he places the question. It's really been something that's probably been a standout of the questions that they've asked in this session. I only say, Mr. Speaker, that yes, I did meet with the Prime Minister on a broad range of federal provincial issues, and the Prime Minister left, I know, feeling and knowing very clearly Alberta's position regarding the goods and sales tax and that goods and services tax, and that we do not like it, we will not support it. He has a good appreciation of Alberta's position.
Mr. Speaker, the point that I want to make to the Premier, has the Premier not put 2 and 2 together and recognized that the Mulroney trade agreement and the sales tax go hand in hand? That's the point. Isn't he aware of that, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member couldn't be further from the truth.
Mr. Speaker, one of the things that Mr. Mulrooney said back in May is that there would be dire consequences for those people that were against his goods and services tax, especially the premiers. Did the premier ask him what the consequences would be for Alberta, and what are they?
Yep. Mr. Speaker, there's no question on the matter of the goods and services tax that we agreed to disagree on it. The federal government has put forward a technical paper, as they describe it, in which they request input from people. Obviously, as a government, to their government, we will be providing them not just the feelings that I expressed to the Prime Minister on Saturday, but through our provincial treasurer and through other parts of our government, intergovernmental affairs, we will be making sure the federal government's very clear on where Alberta stands regarding the goods and services tax. I want also to point out to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition that there was one government and one premier who was opposed to the sales tax, and now we have universally probably the entire spectrum of governments, some possible support, I understand, in Saskatchewan for the sales tax, but generally across this country, other premiers and other governments have now followed Alberta's point of view and strongly are against the sales tax.
Second main question, Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, where were they during the federal election? But I'd like to, Mr. Speaker, direct my question to the Minister of Agriculture. Mr. Speaker, we have some more victims of the Mulrooney trade agreement. Mr. Speaker, in response to the free trade agreement, the Mulrooney government moved ahead quickly with their plans to privatize the Canadian Wheat Board and tear down an important Western Canadian institution by removing oats from the board's jurisdiction effective August the 1st. Now, Mr. Speaker, this decision was made without consulting the prairie pools, farm organizations like Unifarm, the National Farmers Union, or even the democratically elected Canadian Wheat Board Advisory Committee. The government of Alberta clearly supported this move and joined with the private grain companies like Cargill to encourage the Mulrooney government to remove oats from the Canadian Wheat Board. Mr. Speaker, my question to the Minister of Agriculture: given that the Conservatives' own polling firm Decima Research found in an April 1989 survey that 55% of Alberta grain producers opposed the decision to remove oats from the Canadian Wheat Board, why was the government willing to put the interests of the private grain trade ahead of the wishes of Alberta producers?
Mr. Speaker, at no point in time was the government of Alberta prepared to put the interests of the private grain companies ahead of the interests of the producers. The very reason that we supported the removal of oats from under the Canadian Wheat Board was because of the demands of the oat producers. And I have yet to run into oat producers in this province that have been lobbying to keep it under the Canadian Wheat Board. I would again stress in this legislature that we are not, and I'm sure our federal counterparts are not, attempting to dismantle the Canadian Wheat Board. The Canadian Wheat Board does an excellent job in the export of wheat. It does a reasonably good job in the export of barley. It has never played a significant role in the export of oats in all the years that it had it under its control. So I would reiterate our support for the Canadian Wheat Board in those areas where it has performed well for the Western Canadian producer.
Mr. Speaker, the minister talks nonsense. I pointed out the poll about the producers. They didn't consult with the pools. They didn't consult with the advisory council from the Wheat Board. They didn't consult with Unifarm. I don't know who he was talking to. But, Mr. Speaker, the question to the minister, as a result of this brilliant policy, on August 1st, the price of oats dropped from the Wheat Board price of $2.18 per bushel to $1.20 per bushel, a drop of almost a half. How can he justify this to the producers of Alberta, this drop, because of their policies, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, any nonsense I'm hearing is coming from the opposite side of the House. And I think the honourable member should know that every year the price of Canadian Wheat Board grain is set, and that is a guaranteed price and the initial price. The final price for a product will be determined this year, as any other year, by the world marketplace.
Mr. Speaker, that's absolute nonsense. The price has gone from $2.18 to $1.20. Will the minister acknowledge this, and how can he again justify this to Alberta producers?
Mr. Speaker, what I just indicated is not absolute nonsense. Maybe what we should do following question period is have the honourable leader of the opposition meet with the Minister of Agriculture to gain a bit of an understanding of how grain is priced, the role the Canadian Wheat Board plays, and maybe we could teach them a few other things about the most important industry in this province.
Edmonton Glengarry, followed by Red Deer North and Edmonton Kingsway. Edmonton Glengarry.
Mr. Speaker, the Supreme Court of Canada has created a regulatory vacuum in Alberta with its decision today that the Public Utilities Board cannot regulate AGT because, as the court found, telecommunications is a federal responsibility. AGT has not been exactly fair and reasonable in its dealings with Albertans, notably in fleecing Edmonton Tel out of fair long-distance toll revenue, and by overcharging all Albertans to the extent of up to $90 million, 1.5 million users. I might add, Mr. Speaker, that the direction for refund was ordered by the Public Utilities Board in that regard. My question to the minister responsible for telephones is this. Now that the court has ruled that the PUB has no jurisdiction to regulate AGT because it is a federal responsibility, will the minister immediately call for new legislation to put in place a regulator to deal with AGT?
Mr. Speaker, the decision of the Supreme Court to which the honourable member refers is indeed a very, very important one from the standpoint of telecommunications policy in this province. The situation is that PUB, yes, does not have jurisdiction, and indeed CRTC does not have jurisdiction at the present time. So it remains a government prerogative in respect to the Crown ownership of AGT. And part of that management prerogative would be, from our standpoint, to ensure that everything that is there in place by way of tariffs, agreements with ET, ILS, extended flat rate calling, all those things that are so important to the people of Alberta will remain and be there intact. And we have that authority by virtue of the Supreme Court decision. As to a new regulator, to establish any legislation through this House that deals with the regulation of what is now termed to be a federal undertaking would in all likelihood be ultra vires. Mr. Speaker, it's a very complex decision, over 100 pages long, and we are going to take the time in order to ensure that we study it and see all of the fallout from that particular decision. Because while AGT has technically won the particular case and is successful in the decision, there are a number of issues that are up in the air. And we have met with ET this morning, with officials of ET along with AGT. We have formed a task force in order to thoroughly research all of the implications of this decision.
Well, Mr. Minister, I wonder if I could ask you this. Given that AGT was forced by the Public Utilities Board to return monies that they overcharged Albertans, would the minister be prepared to put into place some kind of mechanism, some kind of review mechanism to ensure that this monopoly doesn't abuse Albertans in overcharging them during this interim while we're waiting for this to be sorted out?
Mr. Speaker, I take great exception to the particular context within which the honourable leader frames his question. I think that the people of Alberta have been very well served by Alberta government telephones and indeed ET in the city of Edmonton. And it would be our intention to ensure that Albertans will continue to receive quality service at reasonable rates in the years to come. The context within which that will happen and the regulatory authority is something that will have to be determined in the light of this new decision.
Mr. Speaker, my last question to the minister is that given that the AGT-ET dispute had established a mechanism, a special telecommunications tribunal as part of the PUB, What now will be the mechanism to resolve the difficulties, if any arise, between ET and AGT?
Mr. Speaker, it would be our intention that all of the Public Utility Board orders that are currently in place, whether they be with respect to tariffs, whether they be with respect to the arbitration award, whether they be with respect to individual line service or whatever, will remain intact with no variation. And so, as a direct result of this particular decision, the people of Alberta will be unaffected as at this point. We, however, do know that the court has indicated and in fact left it open for the Parliament of Canada to make some moves legislatively in this area. But we have been in touch with Mr. Mass and have received his assurances that no steps will be taken by way of any legislation until the provinces have had full opportunity for consulting on this important matter.
Red Deer North, followed by Edmonton Kingsway, then Edmonton Meadowlark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My questions are to the Premier. It's a matter of statistical fact that Alberta's economy is continuing to grow and to strengthen. However, we do recognize that certain federal policies can have a negative effect on our own growth here in Alberta. And I'm wondering, in the meetings with the Prime Minister, if the Premier was able to hit on any of the common ground that can serve to continue to see our economy grow as far as related to federal policies.
Excellent question. Well, Mr. Speaker, in my discussions with the Prime Minister, which, by the way, were, Mr. Speaker, and I'm pleased to advise the House, it was a very positive meeting because we were able to cover, as I said earlier to the Leader of the Opposition, a broad range of federal provincial issues. And on many of them, we were able to come to very positive agreements. For instance, Mr. Speaker, in the matter of agriculture, the federal government's continued commitment to work with the Alberta government in strengthening agriculture in this province and rural Alberta. The matter of crop insurance, commitment to working towards a much better crop insurance program, something that people of Alberta feel very strongly about. Also in the area of environmental concerns, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister agreed with me that the province and the federal government must work in close cooperation and that we should strive for an agreement as we've had in the past. And I think the principles are in place to have such an agreement whereby we can have the federal government's environmental concerns and responsibilities closely meshed with the provincial environmental concerns and responsibilities, so there's no duplication of efforts and no problems with both levels of government taking extra time or in conflict with each other in dealing with something as important as the environment. Also, Mr. Speaker, we were able to agree on certain matters in relation to Native affairs, and I expressed to the Prime Minister our concern about the length of time the Lubicon ban negotiations have taken. He's asked me to provide him with some additional information regarding that Lubicon ban negotiation, and I will be doing that shortly. There was also a very strong commitment, Mr. Speaker, to continued diversification of the economy in Western Canada and working together to build that diversification. We were able to agree that there was a strong sense of confidence and investment flowing across Canada, and particularly in Alberta. And then, Mr. Speaker, all members will be pleased to know that we were able to again reaffirm support for the huge Oslo project in Fort McMurray and for the heavy oil upgrader in Lloydminster. So it was a very positive meeting, although there were some areas in which we did disagree.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we're pleased to hear about the common ground. I wonder, though, if the Prime Minister indicated at all that on any of these areas of agreement we might see a lessening of federal cooperation in light of the Premier leading the other provinces in the opposition to the goods and sales tax. Are we in any danger there?
Well, Mr. Speaker, there were several areas in which we were unable to come to an agreement. One, of course, was the area of sales tax, and I've expressed that to the Leader of the Opposition today. And I think the people of Alberta, in fact, people all over Canada know how strongly Albertans feel about it, and our government who has led that fight against the national sales tax. I should say, Mr. Speaker, there was discussion about Alberta's senatorial selection legislation. made sure the Prime Minister is fully aware of that legislation, and he is. We also discussed tourism, the impact of via rail and tourism, Mr. Speaker. We expressed appreciation for the use of the Canadian Embassy in promoting tourism. And, Mr. Speaker, there were some areas of disagreement, definitely, but there are some strong areas of agreement. Interest rates was one that I felt good about, because I believe there is an acceptance in the federal level, finally, of the importance of having lower interest rates in the future. We again stress that very strongly with the federal government, and I believe we will see lower interest rates between now and Christmas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Did the Prime Minister indicate that there would be channels for us to, in an ongoing and fairly immediate way, to continue to express concerns, for instance, in the area of the sales tax or other areas of federal policy that might mitigate on our own growth here?
Well, Mr. Speaker, as I did say earlier to the Leader of the Opposition as well, the government will continue to pursue the matter of sales tax with the federal government. And at the Premier's Conference next week in Quebec City, and I'm certain we'll be able to discuss it as well at the federal provincial meeting of First Ministers. Mr. Speaker, that has now been decided to be held on November the 9th and 10th, and we will have an opportunity there to not only discuss the sales tax, future economic growth in Canada, but also such important matters, I believe, as Meech Lake and Senate reform. And I know that the federal government are still committed to Senate reform, an elected Senate. I'm pleased about that. And so, Mr. Speaker, I guess just in concluding, I should say to the honourable member from Red Deer that there were matters of disagreement, many matters of agreement. And I think it is the nature of federal-provincial relations with our Prime Minister now that here it was on a Saturday afternoon in Red Deer when he was there, and appreciate him making the adjustment to come to Red Deer and be able to meet there and to be working for that long period of time on federal-provincial relations. I congratulate him on that. There are many things we can cooperate with. There will always be tensions of a federal-provincial nature, but this Prime Minister is working at making a better and better role, a better and better attitude and commitment to federal-provincial relations in Canada, and that can only be better for our country.
Edmonton Kingsway, followed by Edmonton Meadowlark.
Mr. Speaker, one of the federal policies that this federal government has sold out Alberta in with the help of this government is a free trade policy. In spite of the 10-year exemption for the Canadian beer industry from the free trade deal, we've seen mergers and other rationalization attempts by Canadian breweries to stave off the inevitable takeover by the American beer giants when the 10 years is up, or maybe even sooner at the rate we're going. The recent Carling-Molson merger will result in the closure of 7 plants, including one in Lethbridge, and the layoff of 1,400 Canadians. Did the Alberta government make any representation to the Canadian Competition Bureau to oppose this merger to prevent those loss of jobs? The Minister of Economic Development and Trade.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. In response to the honourable member for Edmonton Kingsway, as he indicated in his question, he has a full awareness that it does fall under the federal government. We recognize that it might cause some uncertainty in the Lethbridge area, and for that reason we are working with individuals in the area to see if there is some way that we can maximize the use of the facilities in that area. I should indicate, though, that the premise of his question and his relationship to the free trade issue is very misleading, in that one only has to look at the employment figures within this province, and we are starting to see some of the benefits that will accrue, and more will accrue as time unfolds when we do have greater access to that U.S. market.
By maximizing the worker. Yeah, like with the Red Cliff glass plant. It's a fact that most countries allow very little foreign control of their beer industry or their beer markets. Will the minister reverse the Alberta Liquor Control Board policies that already has allowed cheap canned beer from the United States to take over 8% of the Alberta market?
Mr. Speaker, I'm sure the Solicitor General, under whom the Alberta Liquor Control Board answers, would like to supplement my answer. But let me leave the honourable member with the assurance that what we want to do is create a climate within this province whereby we do have greater access to markets other than our own, because if we rely solely upon this province for the sale of our goods, the employment figures that we presently enjoy today will drastically change, and we want to make sure that we increase our activities in markets other than Alberta.
General, on the supplementary information.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In regard to free trade and free enterprise that exists in this country, Mr. Speaker, I am not convinced that the present brewing industry that exists in Alberta cannot in fact cope with the competition from the United States. That competition at this point accounts for 10% of the total beer sales in this province.
To the Minister of the Environment, given that bottles are more environmentally friendly than our cans, and that the only advantage to the cans is that you can ship beer a long distance, which is what the American companies would like, would the Minister not agree that the Red Cliff glass plant would not have shut down if the cans were not making such inroads into our local markets?
Mr. Speaker, I don't know if cans are any more environmentally unfriendly than bottles. I know something about beer, but perhaps more than the honourable member. I do know that the whole recycling industry is market-driven, and if there is no market for glass, then it's very, very difficult to move it. And that's the only answer I can give the honourable member at this time.
Edmonton Meadowlark, followed by Pincher Creek Crow's Nest.
It's obvious that the minister knows something about beer, Mr. Speaker, and he certainly has a lot of room for it. Sorry. Only kidding, Ralph. Only kidding. Mr. Speaker, current grazing lease policy allows renters to keep windfall profits from oil and gas developments on their grazing leases while paying only nominal rents for this public land. In total, this government is giving away an estimated $21 million per year in revenue to which the renters literally have no right. On July 17, 1989, the courts ruled that leaseholders have only one right, to graze their livestock, and now, believe it or not, the minister wants to appeal that decision. To the Minister of Forestry, Lands and Wildlife, why does this minister allow a handful of renters to receive $21 million in windfall profits which rightfully belong to all Albertans?
Well, first of all, Mr. Speaker, I don't know where the honourable member gets the number 21 million, because I don't believe that's anywhere near being accurate. And frankly, on average, the compensation levels that grazing leaseholders receive are 1/2 to 1/3 as much as what landowners receive. And it's not windfall profits. They receive compensation for disturbance and when pipelines or seismic lines go through. Mr. Speaker, also it was looked at in depth in 1981 by an all-member party of this House, a select committee on surface rights compensation, and their recommendation in that report was that this, the way it is at present, is the way it should be.
Mr. Speaker, I wonder whether the minister could reconcile that statement with the fact that the Canadian Petroleum Landmen's Association has indicated, among other examples, that there is a grazing lease in this province for which the leaseholders, the renters, pay $20,000 and receive $284,000 in windfall oil and gas revenues on that grazing lease.
Mr. Speaker, again, his numbers are all totally out to lunch. There's no fact to that. I don't know where the $284,000 number came from. And he's 1 year late because in 1981 I met with the land surveyors and discussed the whole issue with them and agreed to meet at any time with them and with the cattlemen and the grazing leaseholders to see if there was some problem on a better way to resolve it.
Well, it was in 1987 that they made the report to which I just referred, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, final question is to the Premier. I wonder whether the Premier can tell us how he feels about $21 million in revenue slipping through his government's hand each year, and will he please direct the Treasurer as soon as possible to begin collecting it?
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member has asked a series of questions and then received an answer from the honourable Minister, Forestry, Lands and Wildlife, and didn't pay any attention to the answers. Surely, if he's going to present a series of questions written out, I know, and prepared in advance, but still take some consideration of the Minister's answer.
Pincher Creek, Crow's Nest, followed by Edmonton Beverly.
Mr. Speaker, the Old Man River Dam is important to the continued economic development of southern Alberta, as it will provide an assured water supply for municipalities, for agriculture, for fisheries, for industry, and for recreation. Yet there are groups who are opposed to the construction of the dam and have challenged its construction in the courts. My question to the Minister of Public Works, Supplies and Services, could he advise the Assembly as to the current status of court challenges regarding the construction of the Old Man River Dam? There's more than one challenge.
Mr. Speaker, on Friday last, Justice Jerome basically indicated that it was irrefutable in terms of the evidence that the province of Alberta had undertaken the necessary public examination and public review of all matters pertaining to the Old Man River Dam. I've indicated in past times that we would anticipate that after 1986, when the decision was made to construct the Old Man River Dam, it's one of the most significant environmental protection and enhancement projects this country has known in a long period of time, that we would anticipate that prior to the conclusion of that dam project that there would be a number of court cases. I would suspect that between now and the final conclusion of the dam by the fall of 1991 that there will probably be additional court challenges. But the decision on Friday last, it's pretty clear in my mind, Mr. Speaker, that the position taken by this government since 1986 has been the valid and the correct one.
Supplementary question, Mr. Speaker. The Fore Group has challenged the safety of the foundation of the Old Man River Dam. Could the Minister advise the House if he has any evidence to assure the Assembly that there is no foundation to these allegations?
Mr. Speaker, it was a few days ago that I had the privilege of tabling in the Legislative Assembly a report entitled The Old Man River Dam Project, a review of Greggs and Associates report. And the conclusions in that report are very, very clear, Mr. Speaker, that the evidence that had been presented by certain groups with respect to safety in the Old Man River Dam, such words as that evidence was misinterpreted or misunderstood. There's no evidence presented by this one Dr. Greggs or found by any of the project investigators to suggest that there's any safety concerns whatsoever with the Old Man River Dam. Concluded again that there are no faults or anything else. The report is a very, very conclusive one, been written by internationally reputed scientists, and I would hope, Mr. Speaker, that it would once again put to bed some of these ridiculous allegations and charges about safety with the Old Man River Dam.
Final supplementary, Mr. Speaker, to the Minister. Will the government assure Albertans that no taxpayers' funds will be provided to assist Fore with its courts challenges, and that the government will apply to the courts to recover the government's costs for these challenges?
Mr. Speaker, the Old Man River Dam been identified as a project that would cost $349.6 million in 1986 dollars. And since that time, needless to say, the actual cost of the Old Man River Dam would have been accentuated by these ongoing court challenges. Mr. Speaker, I think it would be most regrettable that if taxpayers' dollars had to be spent in supporting some of the challenges that are just very strange, to say the least, in my opinion, Mr. Speaker.
Edmonton Beverly, followed by Calgary McKnight and Banff Cochrane.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 1979, this government made a commitment to meet the health care needs of residents in Northeast Edmonton by building a health care facility. A decade has now passed. There has been no action.
Shame.
The recent announcement of the West Aim Research and Development Center and the Dow Shell fractionating plant resulting in an estimated growth in population growth in Northeast Edmonton would suggest that the need for a healthcare center is needed now more than ever before. My question then is to the Minister of Health. Isn't 10 years long enough to assess and to plan for an appropriate community health care center in Edmonton, Northeast Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, as a province, we make no apology for managing the health resources in the most diligent way we can in the interests of managing our trusteeship role as a government. The issue of whether or not another hospital is needed in the Northeast area was one that was assessed in 1979. And although there may well have been a context in which a second hospital would be built, the realities of the changing demographics through the 80s changed that decision significantly. There was a new hospital built up and operating now, the Green Nuns Hospital, in southeastern Edmonton, and which is serving the area. The issue of meeting the health needs in northeast Edmonton is one which I believe can be met without the construction of an additional hospital, and that's the way we're proceeding at this time.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I could perhaps make a suggestion to the Minister and ask her whether she would strike a task force involving the local area council and the healthcare units in the area to do a review of the unmet healthcare needs in Northeast Edmonton in order to formulate and create recommendations to see whether in fact the facility is required in that area.
Mr. Speaker, I have certainly spoken to a good number of residents in the Northeast Edmonton area, as well as their representatives who are locally elected, and I would be pleased to look at any kinds of mechanisms that might be useful in the context. I do believe that we will see a changing shift when we get on stream the expansions in emergency care at the Royal Alexandra Hospital, the Charles Campbell and the Misericordia Hospital, all of which will contribute to a reconfiguration and in fact meeting the needs in Northeast Edmonton in the best possible way.
Well, Mr. Speaker, speaking of ambulances and the need for emergency situations, will the Minister have her department work with the Edmonton Ambulance Authority to ensure the response time and emergency health care are keeping pace with the population demands in Northeast Edmonton?
Well, not only will I make that commitment, Mr. Speaker, for Northeast Edmonton, because I'm the Minister of Health for all Albertans and ensuring that they have access to the health requirements that they have. I can say, though, that one of the implementations that we will be taking, which will be taking place this year and early next, will be a registry for ambulance care, which will ensure that we are aware as the ambulance is proceeding with an emergency in a far better contextual way for the needs and where and which hospitals can meet them. I think it's very important with respect to emergency care or trauma care that we recognize that there are going to be pressures on different facilities at different times, and a better measure of that and a better predictability of that is what we hope to achieve by the ambulance registry system.
Calgary McKnight, followed by Banff Cochrane, then Edmonton Strathcona.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, universities in Alberta have done a marvelous job in recent years of making do with inadequate levels of government funding. There is not enough money to provide an education for all deserving students who apply for entrance to our universities, nor sufficient funds to maintain and replace scientific and technical equipment. These institutions have been encouraged by this government to seek out private sector donations. Yet the government's recently announced Advanced Education Endowment Incentive Fund Successor Program places severe limits on the amount of such donations eligible for matching grants. My question is to the Minister of Advanced Education. Why has the Minister placed such an unreasonably low limit on the amount which his department will provide under this program?
Mr. Speaker, I would hope the honourable member would be aware there's been some $386 million of taxpayers' money since 1980 allocated to the endowment fund to our post-secondary institutions. Recently, this government announced on June the 8th $80 million additional funds to our post-secondary system. Granted, there's a new formula put in place, but in the view of the government, certainly this minister, That's a significant contribution to the post-secondary system in this province by the taxpayers of Alberta.
Mr. Speaker, the University of Alberta has already raised some $13 million this year alone, well above the $2.4 million limit, and the University of Lethbridge has raised double its annual $300,000 limit, largely due to the perception that these donations would be matched by provincial dollars. Is the minister not concerned that the new restrictions will significantly damage university fundraising efforts?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think assuming the facts quoted by the Honourable Member for McKnight are accurate, that's a true indication of the support in the private sector out there for the post-secondary system. I think it speaks for itself. This minister has said that if there's any way in the future that there are additional funds available, consideration would be given to it. But I would simply add and conclude it's the only province in Canada that has this program, and we think it's extremely generous.
Mr. Speaker, given that universities and donors were assured on numerous occasions that a new matching grant program would be announced, would the minister at least consider clearing up the backlog of these programs by matching at the former dollar-for-dollar rate all donations received from eligible post-secondary institutions in the time between the expiration of the last endowment program and the announcement of the new program?
Well, Mr. Speaker, there are still some funds left from the previous commitments of the endowment fund, but I would point out the $80 million was allocated in 1980, lasted less than 5 years. Another 80 was allocated by this government, lasted less than 3 years, required an additional $48 million to match, and now the additional $80 million. Mr. Speaker, I think the $386 million of funds allocated to the post-secondary system have been extremely generous on behalf of the taxpayers of this province, and frankly, I'm at a loss somehow to understand why the institutions are saying that the $80 million recently announced is not sufficient.
Bev Cochrane, followed by Edmonton Strathcona. Bev Cochrane.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, Mr. Speaker, information became public that partially treated and untreated sewage was being dumped into the Bow River by the Banff sewage treatment plant. I spoke on Friday with the superintendent of Banff Park, Dave Day, and I was advised that this crisis was due to a substantial increase in the tourist population over the long weekend. I was also advised, Mr. Speaker, that in the short term the problem was being dealt with by manual chlorination of sewage, and in the long term by the expected opening of the sewage treatment plant in Banff Townsite in November. Notwithstanding that, however, my question is to the Honourable Minister of Environment. Because this type of problem has such significant impact on the people of Banff-Cochrane constituency and all areas downstream, including the city of Calgary, what type of monitoring is the department doing to ensure that this problem is addressed?
Well, Mr. Speaker, now the citizens of Calgary know how the citizens of Brooks felt some years ago when we had to clean up and enhance to almost tertiary treatment our sewage treatment system in Calgary when I was the mayor there. But to answer the question, Mr. Speaker, the health units along the way downstream are monitoring this situation very closely. We were given to understand that this project being undertaken by the federal government without a tremendous amount of input, by the way, from the province of Alberta, is scheduled to be completed in October of this year, and it's long overdue. But in the meantime, all we can do is monitor the situation, advise the residents downstream that of the situation, and to take whatever methods are necessary through the treatment of water downstream to make sure that no health hazards occur.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again to the Minister of the Environment. Can the Minister ensure the people of Alberta that the environmental standards of this province would preclude the the dumping of any type of untreated sewage into the water streams in Alberta?
Mr. Speaker, the only place that that's allowed, and it's because of an inadequate system in the city of Edmonton that we're going to have to deal with in very, very short order, we have to allow the dumping of raw sewage under very, very severe circumstances in this particular city, and that problem is going to be resolved. But overall, the province of Alberta, and certainly the Department of Environment, would in no way condone untreated sewage from being discharged into river systems.
Mr. Speaker, again to the Minister of the Environment, will the Minister ensure that, and indicate to this House that he will ensure, that the construction and implementation of the new sewage treatment plant is monitored by Alberta Environment to ensure that it is on stream as quickly as possible?
Well, Mr. Speaker, hopefully our new relationship relative to environmental concerns with the federal government will allow us to assess the sewage treatment system at Banff much the same as in matters of environmental concern are assessed in the province of Alberta by the federal government. And hopefully we can reach that kind of agreement and get that kind of cooperation. I think it's absolutely necessary and becomes even more necessary, Mr. Speaker, with the advent now of Banff becoming a town site within the province of Alberta.
Edmonton Strathcona, followed by Edmonton Gold Bar.
Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Attorney General and concerns legal aid. Mr. Speaker, the situation in Alberta is quite scandalous when it comes to civil justice, in that well-heeled citizens of Alberta can afford civil litigation, the rest cannot. And that includes those of better than moderate means even. Yet, Mr. Speaker, the civil legal aid runs at 1/7 of the level per capita that one finds in Ontario. Will the Attorney General agree to an immediate expansion of civil legal aid without waiting for the results from any report or anything, the need for it having been amply demonstrated?
Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased to see that the task force report that was commissioned by the Attorney General's Department, the Law Society of Alberta, and the Legal Aid Society has finally reached the Honourable Member's desk, and that is one of the recommendations that is being looked at by all three partners of this program.
Mr. Speaker, one of the recommendations in this report, which has yet to be filed by the government, Mr. Speaker, or tabled, is that the legal aid that the federal government is prepared to give and yet is being foregone by the government be sought. And so my question to either the Attorney General or the Minister of Social Services, who has some part in this, is this: will they not agree that the excuse that because the federal government has allegedly lower standards of eligibility is no excuse at all to getting that additional money for the taxpayers of Alberta?
Thank you. Time for question period has expired. Might we have unanimous consent to complete this series? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I'd be happy to respond to that. We had that matter raised in the Assembly before, and my information at that time, and it still stands, is that if we implement the requirements of the Canada Assistance Plan, it will be much more restrictive to the clientele that we're able to serve, and it will only mean a minimal recapture of dollars, and we're not prepared to take away that level of service to some Albertans that very much need it.
Final.
$300,000 is hardly minimal, Mr. Speaker. Until the government ceases to be so contemptuous, Mr. Speaker, of the rights of Albertans to access to the courts, will the Attorney General agree that any boast by this government that our legal aid system is as good as any in Canada is a cynical joke?
Mr. Speaker, I don't know where the pomposity of the person across the aisle comes from, but we do have a very good legal aid society that's operating a good legal aid program in this province.
And through the task force report that the member has, there's a number of recommendations that are being considered by 3 parties to this legal aid program, and not just the government. We look forward to bringing those forward, at which time the honourable member can get up and show his pomposity further.
Orders of the day. Orders of the day.
Government bills and orders for second reading. Bill number 20. Honourable Mr. Johnston.